evening and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, an ET Now initiative for the micro, small and medium enterprise sector of India. Tonight we are set to have another exciting conversation on MSME dialogues. Last year, India became the first country in the world to mandate a minimum CSR spending for corporations above a certain size. What does this mean for small and particularly medium-scaled companies? What are the areas that responsible MSMEs can invest in? How does a company identify genuine causes? And what does it take to build an internal organizational culture towards CSR practices? To discuss all of this and much more, I'd like to welcome our set of experts tonight. Vijay Sethi, Chief Information Officer and Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Hero MotoCorp. Akhil Bansal, Deputy CEO at KPMG. Parul Soni, Global Managing Partner, Think Through Consulting. And Soumitra Chakrabarti, CEO at Finovation. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you on board Leaders of Tomorrow. And let's begin with this law that was enacted last year, making it mandatory for certain companies of a certain size to invest in CSR. How much of an impact does that have on the MSME sector? And Soumitra, perhaps you'd like to take that. Are you seeing adoption of CSR practices increasing from the SME sector?
Certainly, we are seeing an increase in engagement as far as corporations, larger corporations is concerned. And I think it is going to have a ripple effect to the SME sector. You cannot deny the fact that 90% or more than 90, as we were discussing earlier, more than 90% of the industrial units across the country belongs to the MSME sector. But the issue here is that unless and until you can actually take the policy from top down, and what I mean here is top down is not within a company. Right. I'm talking here top because these SMEs are basically suppliers to the larger corporations. If you can transform these larger corporations to enable a very value-based, ethical and a socially responsible supply chain, sooner or later the SMEs will have to fall into place. So you know, the law actually facilitates these corporations or mandates going one step beyond, being the first country to mandate such a law. Right. And now that the corporations have to engage in socially responsible behavior, I guess it's only a matter of time before they actually are going to encourage by finance or physical support the SME sector to come up and be more friendly to socially responsible mannerisms as far as supply chain process management is concerned.
Right. But Akhil, is the law relevant to the MSME sector at this point in time?
I will split the question into two parts. When it comes to the CSR as mandated in the corporate law, if you do the analysis, there are million companies in this country, and let alone the partnership and sole proprietorship, which constitute majorly MSME sector. Even out of a million corporate structure we have in the country, CSR rules is applicable only to about 15 to 16,000 companies. Right. These are more large organizations. So from the mandated rule perspective, it is not so much applicable to MSME sector. But one thing which the rule has done is actually increase the awareness, and the ripple effect is getting into the MSME sector as well.
Okay, but the law stated that 5 crores of net profit for the last 3 years taken together. Wouldn't that mean that a lot of corporations fall under the ambit now?
So there are 3 rules which one of the rule has to be applied, and of course some of the medium enterprise on which this 5 crore rule will apply. Right. Because a 1,000 crore turnover or a 500 crore net worth will not so much be applicable. Yes. To given the current definition of the MSME. Yes. Today in the country. Yes, so there would be some medium enterprises which are making 5 crore profit or more. It will be a very limited number on which the mandated rule will be applicable on.
Okay. And Parul, a lot of small enterprises tend to confuse CSR with charity. Everyone seems to think that if the entrepreneur is donating to certain causes in his personal capacity, that is CSR done for the company. Would you like to throw some light for the benefit of the MSME
You know, what
sector?
happens is if you look at India, what you spoke about, that it is CSR, Companies Act 2013, which has mandated that, a class of companies which will be, investing or putting the contribution of 2% into CSR. The thinking is that, it is more of a contribution, not a donation. because there's a differentiation between contribution and donation, because the donation definitely looks at, you are donating without looking at strategically looking at the investment where you're putting the money. Yeah. The CSR contribution is basically a contribution where the donor, as a company or a corporate, knows where that money is going, what is an organization, what is the plan, is it a program or a project, what will be the duration of the project, and also looking at the measurement of impact. So the whole thinking has changed from looking at charitable donation to strategic philanthropy or strategic contribution for the society, which will bring a multiple or a multiplier effect for inclusive development for the country. Because the thinking is, if you look at all those points, it is important for us to see that this 24,000 crores, which was estimated that 16,000 companies will contribute, will bring much larger effect from what the government is spending on social aspects.
Okay. And Vijay Sethi, since you are the only corporate view that we have on the panel tonight, Hero MotoCorp, of course, has some fantastic CSR initiatives. What are some of the best practices at Hero that you think a small company or even some people in your supply chain can really emulate easily?
So I think there are two things that need to be taken into consideration. Number one, we need to decide as to what are my areas in which I want to impact. You can't really boil the entire ocean day one. So any enterprise needs to decide as to what are those 2 or 3 or key 4 areas that you want to concentrate on. For example, in our case, we have said that girl education is one. Road safety is another. Environment is another. So these are the kind of things that we have done. Similarly, for an MSME, they need to decide as to what are those areas. The second key thing is the entire CSR efforts cannot be left just to the CSR team. Till you really involve the entire organization, number one. And beyond that, if you can really involve the entire community. So whether it is the areas where I am doing CSR or even my families. So if we can do the entire thing, then it becomes a movement. So as I agree with them that it's not just about the cost. It's not about that 24,000 crore rupees that you're putting in, but it's also the effort which is coming from the corporate sector, it's effort coming from the community, families. So when the entire effort comes into the putting up into CSR projects, I think that really creates an impact over there.
Okay. But Soumitra, what's the biggest challenge that a medium-scaled company or a small-scale company faces, even if it has that intent to really contribute to society? Would you say it's the lack of finance, or is it the lack of awareness and the mindset more than that?
Well, as far as the intent is concerned, I would really not delve into it, because I think the intent is quite pretty much there. In fact, because of a closed environment atmosphere of working for the MSME sector, they are sometimes even more bothered about their workforce engagement, employee welfare, and this employee welfare extends beyond employees to their families, which is their nearby environment. One of the greatest hindrances that, as per whatever data we could assemble, the fact is that the MSME sector faces a lot of financing problem. The financing problem comes because, for a Hero MotoCorp to decide that, we want to transform our mechanisms into a more responsible, socially responsible mechanism, they will have the finance to support it. So they will have the approvals, physical approvals of the board along with the finance. But for a MSME to decide, that we'll completely transform our chain will take a lot of finance. And this is where, larger corporations can extend a line of credit or at least give them some kind of a financial support to allow them to that bandwidth where they can actually look at transforming themselves into more socially responsible.
Maybe incentivize a lot of the players in their own value chain. Okay, so Parul, what are some of the best practices that the Indian MSME sector can pick up with respect to CSR that are really there in other parts of the world?
If you look at the numbers, 29.8 million MSMEs in India, and they are supplying to the larger corporations or all that. We have to also look at the chain of events, what's happening. For example, how we can look at, one is the ethical supply chain. The other thing is incentives for that supply chain, so that the larger corporation can value that the money which will be spent at the downstream level is also well recognized. The other thing is, if I look at from a larger ecosystem perspective, we have to see that larger corporations, when they're working, if they can take the MSMEs who are in the supply chain to create a larger impact through a pool of fund, which the larger corporation is doing. For example, a larger corporation where they have a huge number of MSMEs and SMEs who are supply. The thing is, if they have a big campaign to include those MSME and the SMEs into their CSR as a mandate, the larger effect will happen. We have islands of success. Small successes when you're talking about education, livelihood, agriculture, enhancement of variety and all those things. But the thing is, these small organizations, companies at the MSME or SMEs I will talk about, they are left behind because they have a very small pool of money on CSR. For example, 20 lakhs, which if a SME has to contribute for CSR, the thing is for 20 lakhs, they will not be in a position to create a larger impact. Then what they will do is, the last option will be, write a check for Prime Minister's Relief Fund or Swachh Bharat Kosh. The thing is that 20 lakhs, when you look at the multiplier effect of 20 or 25 those MSMEs working together and creating a pool with a larger, corporation which they are supplying to, see the whole, how the money will be, that's the multiplier effect we are looking at.
Okay, so that's one approach. Akhil, what is the sort of impact that the whole MSME sector can really create if it got together to seriously doing CSR activities on ground?
One word answer is huge. If you look at the MSME sector, whether there are 40 million, 36 million, it's a number because it's an estimate. It's mostly 94% of MSME sector is unregistered. But whatever the number is, it's a very significant number, and the MSME are spread through the country. Every nook and corner you will find an MSME.
So reach would be an advantage.
The reach will be huge. And if I take a step back and see what MSME has been doing, not because of the CSR rule, but also the way it's a part of the Indian culture to give back to the society. It has been happening for decades and centuries in name of philanthropy. It is more driven by the owner of the business or by an individual in all the cities and villages where you will see a lot of philanthropy. If the kind of money which MSME is spending on charity, if that can be pooled together, an ecosystem can be provided where it can be put to use in a strategic manner on a sustainable basis, it will create a big difference to the nation.
Right. But I think perhaps one of the other big challenges for a small company is really how does one execute an idea that one has. So Vijay Sethi, in that scheme of things, is it a good option for an MSME to really outsource the CSR function?
See, there are two parts to it. One is, of course, you can outsource. That's one option. But to my mind, a better option could be that most of these MSMEs would be working with a large corporation. So if there are projects with a large corporation, and if they can become part of it. For example, if I'm saying that as part of one of my projects, I'm supporting 30,000 girls in Delhi.
Right.
So maybe an MSME can join hand for just 100 girls. So automatically the entire mechanism of monitoring, seeing the impact, how to do the entire project, that's taken care by the entire thing rather than creating one more parallel structure. And the cost for MSME actually goes down because you don't have to create a parallel structure.
So I'm going to hold that thought, and we are going to take a short break at this point. On the other side, we'll find out how a company can recognize genuine initiatives and if investments in CSR can really impact your bottom line. Stay with us on Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues, only on ET Now. Welcome back to Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues. Tonight we are talking about CSR and sustainable development practices for small and medium enterprises. Soumitra, there are a lot of MSMEs out there who have the intent, who sometimes cannot find the right cause to invest in, and you're working in that direction. You're supporting a lot of organizations and helping them invest in the right causes. If a CEO is looking at investments, how does one judge that, this is the perfect cause to invest in and this is not spurious?
Okay, now we are working with a few clusters of SMEs. Now, one of the interesting things that you just spoke is investment. You start treating donations, contributions as investments now. So the moment you draw investment, you attract a lot of respect into it these days. Right. So one is, these SMEs, there's a beautiful thing that you can do. The SMEs actually always exist in cluster. And even the government structure incentivizes cluster development for SMEs. A cluster actually affects the local population. And they're very closely attached. The workforce or their vendors, whosoever they are directly affected in and out from the local ecosystem.
Right.
Now, a cluster which has X number of SMEs present will face the similar problem given the local phenomena, local socio-economic environment. So identification will be quite easier. In fact, because to have larger ramifications of what he has suggested on Hero MotoCorp, but it's only possible when vendors are only from Delhi. If I'm sure they are taking supplies from somewhere in south, it's very difficult to align with larger corporations based out of Delhi with their CSR initiatives. So these SMEs actually have a lot of ripple effect within a local area.
Right.
Ideally, what we try and advise people is to form a joint action group, which is basically a cluster of leaders from all these institutions, all these SMEs, form a local agenda to address, and then go about it with collective effort. Right. You can form a collective consortium of SMEs, 100, 200 SMEs getting together, and then on the volume part of the funds, that also has a multiplier effect.
Okay. So Parul, to really put all of that into action, I think one, it has to flow from the CEO himself.
Correct.
It flows top down. So in a small company, how does one really build that attitude towards giving back to society, considering that, it is a question of survival for many of these companies?
The thing is, one is the mindset. One is the mindset to give, where to give, how to give. Because there are a lot of W's in, the questions in people's mind, and also with, MSME and SMEs as such. The thinking is, it's everything looks very good on when you talk. We work with a lot of companies all over India and also globally. My main issue is to see that you have to really work with the leaders, which are the CXO level, to understand, to give them that understanding that your money will really play a bigger role. For example, how our journey starts in a nutshell is basically one, going in talking about what the CSR Act is all about, looking at how much is the calculation of money, how you can give, identification of partners, because in CSR there are 4 ways you can identify partners, or you can work on CSR. One is you can work through your own department, and the second is you can create a foundation, because large companies, you will see that a lot of companies have created their own foundations, which are not-for-profit organization, trust society, or Section 8. The third is you create a partnership with an existing organization which is registered as a trust society, Section 8. And those societies already have a track record of 3 years. And the fourth is, for example, if my friend from Hero wants to create a kind of a larger pool, they can bring all their SMEs partners as their supply chain partners and create a pool. That's also possible.
If I combine your last 2 questions as to what role CEO can play and where to look for a good project, I'll take a step back. The MSME sectors are more driven by the promoters, by the owners, and it's of course the mindset of the promoter which is the top at the tone, and it can percolate down. But if generally 2 rules are applied, I mean, there are n number of NGOs in the country. I know there are a number of them fake as well, but there are n number of NGOs who are working well in this country. Yeah. The idea from the business perspective is to first include corporate social responsibility in your business strategy. Right. If it is part of your business strategy, and which is in the long run is helpful to your own business, it will happen. And the 2 areas which you can immediately look for, however small or big you are, is internally, and because it's not driven by the corporate laws, and it is you don't have to follow the rules which the Companies Act has prescribed, you can do what you want. So if you look at internally, your employee base itself is a good place where you can start your corporate social responsibility. And two, the moment you go out of your employee base, the surroundings you are operating in will have hundreds of the need which you can address. If you just focus on these two areas, you can identify 100 causes you can support at whatever level.
Akhil just mentioned making CSR a business objective for a small company or a company of any size for that matter. Vijay Sethi, tell us how, or show our MSME sector the ROI that they can get out of investing in CSR and giving back to society.
See, I think from ROI perspective, one needs to look at, one is I'm investing. If I'm just looking at that as investment in the society and trying to get some returns back, I think it starts from the basic philosophy, which is where I'm giving something to the society, where my contribution as a corporate, which is taking resources from the society, I'm paying back.
Right.
The ROI doesn't come straight from money, but it comes from the respect that you get when you really feel in the eyes of the beneficiaries that yes, the company has really made an impact. I think from my perspective, that is what ROI is all about.
Okay.
And I'll just add one more point, talking about what are the areas which should be taken first. To my mind, the first area to be taken, apart from the business thing, which Akhil rightly said, should be an area which is closest to the heart of the CEO.
Right.
Because when your heart is there, then you will not really look at as to whether I should go ahead, go more. I think that should be the first priority.
Right. Soumitra?
See, what you spoke about the ROI component, there is a direct ROI on this as well. Now, for example, as we have adopted, let's give it to the government. They have come out with a good legislation, no doubt, but they have been inspired from the West.
Yes.
This is not our own inborn concept, so let's not create it that way. But anyways, it's good that it has come now. Now, for example, you have these SMEs, which are suppliers to all the Western companies.
Right.
Which so about 85% of the products actually that the SMEs produce are exported. So you have the consumers out in the West, and the companies in the West have started becoming very, very responsible in their procurement channels.
Yes.
So you know the direct
environment-wise, most of the
Yeah.
MSME sector is really now catching
Correct.
up and becoming
So,
compliant.
so
with things.
if you don't change your processes of your internal processes to deliver those goods to your exporter partners, exporting partners outside, sooner or later they will actually force it down.
Yes.
So it's about a direct impact on your business. So that procurement channel, I think a direct ROI is involved in that. So the faster you do, the better it is.
Okay, so we are running out of time. So for a quick roundup, I'm going to ask each one of you, what is the lowest hanging fruit in your opinion that an SME can easily achieve and contribute effectively towards sustainable development? Mr.
If in
Sethi.
case of SMEs, the culture can be changed and made from CSR to ISR, individual social responsibility, where the entire organization is involved, I think the impact would be much higher.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'm not looking at only MSME. From my own perspective, I'm a great supporter of education. If we are able to educate our kids who are 6 to 16 years of age, they will be the future of the country.
All right.
Yeah, my thinking is we have to co-create and we have to cooperate and also pool. We have to have a habit to pool in money or pool in resources. That's what the mantra should be, because together we can succeed, individually we cannot succeed. So that's my main thinking. And there are examples which we are creating with a lot of districts as such, with Gurgaon Community Foundation and all. There is an avenue which is available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soumitra,
Well, my prescription in one line would be that we start giving respect to SMEs. When we are talking CSR, we are actually not giving them the due respect. A lot of these SMEs are doing a lot of silent social responsibility,
Yes.
which we are
And
not
that
focusing
doesn't get
on.
talked about very often.
So, we always talk about bigger corporations. So I think we start looking at them with respect, and I'm 100% sure with the kind of revenue that they give, they're going to count on it. I think they're going to live up to it.
Okay, wonderful insights there, from individual social responsibility to co-creating and really cooperating. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being on the show tonight. I hope you enjoyed this edition of MSME Dialogues on Leaders of Tomorrow. That's all we have tonight. Do feel free to get in touch with us. You can write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com or reach us using social media by just putting in the hashtag LOT or call us on the number flashing on your screen. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye and good night.